This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and I'm going to be looking at a classic game from the 1963 U.S. Championship where Bobby Fischer went 11 out of 11, winning every single game in the tournament and crushing everyone. One of the most dominating, definitely the most dominating U.S. Championship ever. So this was Bobby Fischer playing against Pal Benko, and it started out fairly standard. Benko was employing a Pirc Defense, and so knight c3 here, the idea is to inhibit black from playing d5, setting up something of a positional bind on the light squares in the center. So the move order is definitely important against the Pirc. For example, if knight f3, d5 by black, I think gives a very comfortable position. So anyway, knight c3, d6, and now f4, and I believe this is called the Austrian Attack here. And white is really just going for it. You know, they're going. This is kind of the most principled way to continue as white against the Pirc defense, because if black is going to play this kind of hyper modern opening where he's giving white the big center, and his plan is to later try to undermine that big center. As white, it just makes the most sense. The most natural way to play is to take the space and make black prove it. So that's exactly what Fischer does with bishop d3 here, just solid in the center. h3, go ahead and kick that pesky light squared bishop away. And so now what's happened here is black has managed to get rid of his light squared bishop, which can really be a problem piece for him. And so with e5, this is a real critical juncture in the game, because we're going to see here, how is white going to maintain his center, or is he going to try to transform that space advantage he had in the center to something else? Perhaps a kingside attack is what Fischer decides. So first he takes on e5, and if he'd played d5 here, black was probably just going to go ahead and crash in. Even if it involves sacking a pawn, he's definitely going to get sufficient counterplay in the form of attacking on the e4 square and the e file. So Fischer instead says, okay, we'll take the pawn. Now he goes with f5. And it looks like he's angling for a very straightforward idea of playing g4 and g5, and really just trying to overwhelm black on the king side before black has time to develop counterplay in the center. Because after f5, when I first started looking at the game, I was thinking, well, what's the big deal? f5, I mean, black has got he's got a lot of choices here, and maybe, I don't know, black could have had an idea to play knight h5, I think, here. But the problem is, maybe white can continue with knight d5, and the idea behind knight h5, for example, would be, let's say, I don't know, not castles, but I don't know, g4, that black could sack a pawn here to achieve some domination of the dark squares. It's just something to think about in these kind of positions. Although Fischer, still he can play knight d5, he can go queenside, and knight h5 just seems superficial. So I think this is what's going on with Benko here, and why he played such a weird move, because I think he kind of freaked out. He got scared about g4 and g5, and anything with knight d4, trying to play for like b5 and b4. I mean, maybe this is what he should have gone for, is some type of hyperactive counterplay, because white's king is still in the middle. So like if it hits the fan here, for example, knight takes b5, maybe black really doesn't have anything to worry about. He can just take on e4, and I think here he's going to get the piece back with some change. Something like this. I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to give an example. There's a lot of complications going on in the center. I think black maybe could have opted for something like this with b5. The problem for his position is that if a6 and then b5, he's going to lose a lot of time. It's going to be really slow, and it seems like white is going to get there first with g4, g5, stuff like f6, and knight coming to d5. So anyway, this is all very important stuff, what was going on in Benko's head. Because he played like a really weird move. He just took the pawn here. And you got to remember, I think this was like round 10 in this U.S. Championship. Fischer had beat everybody. So he's playing Benko. Benko is probably a little nervous. Fischer was just so dominant in this 1963. It was just killing everybody. I think these psychological factors, I think this contributed to Benko taking the pawn on f5, because you really don't see this. Very rare to see this kind of stuff where black is going to just volunteer to give up the pawn cover around his king, because it's very dangerous. I thought at least he would play knight d4 maybe back, and then take. I thought this was the idea, was to jam in the center and try to take advantage of White's centralized, exposed king. But instead, Benko just took the pawn. Now he plays knight d4, and so now just back for White. Knight e8, this was a good, I thought this was a fine maneuver by Benko. Also possible, knight h5, I think, trying to really play on the dark squares. I thought that's what Benko was up to. But knight e8, okay, maneuvering the knight to d6. Looks like he's angling to play f5, which would really liberate his position. So, f5, it seems like that's what he's angling for. So Fischer plays queen g3 here, and he's trying to develop a kingside attack because Fischer's playing the center. Obviously, White has nothing to do in the center. Maybe Black could even be trying to play b5 and b4 to disrupt White's coordination. But I think in this position, it was absolutely paramount that Benko played f5 because it's just, his previous maneuvers with the knight, right? I mean, that takes time. And you've got to help yourself out on the king side because White is starting to get a couple of ideas that aren't going to be very pleasant for Black to defend. So I think f5 was absolutely critical here, and I don't really see a way to a very clear advantage for White. Bishop h6 was the first thing I looked at, maybe queen f6, and this just seems absolutely fine for Black. I mean, it's not the prettiest endgame in the world with this isolated e-pawn. But White does have the bishop, but I think the activity of the Black knights compensates and gives him every reason to believe he's got an equal position going into that endgame. So just a sample, and anything else here, like if you take this, now we're looking, yes, again, the e-pawn doesn't look pretty, but if, just any kind of example here, if Black does go into opposite colored bishops, I still think that White, the attack for White is far from conclusive. So instead, Benko played king h8, and this is why I was talking so much about the psychology and Fischer. I think he had beat 9 people in a row before playing Benko in this tournament. Not 9 people, I'm talking GMs and IMs, real players here. So king h8, just kind of a weird move. It was like, had to play f5. Now king h8 is like, what's going on here? So this gave Fischer a chance. He played queen g4. And so now f5 is no longer possible. So c6, just try to keep the knight out. And this is a very, very instructive game on how not to play defense. Because what Benko is doing, and I'm not trying to knock Pal Benko at all. He is a very, very good grandmaster of, I guess, about 4 or 5 decades. I mean, Benko is legit. But, in this game, this is how not to play defense. I mean, king h8, c6, these are not active moves. These are responding, timid moves where you're not trying to gain counterplay for yourself. You're just trying to prevent your opponent's threats. Not at all how you want to play. So Fischer just sneaking in, queen f2 to g3 to g4 to h5. So methodically getting the queen closer, also keeping an eye on that critical f5 square. So now queen e8, and it's like Benko wants everything. There's no, there's no, he's trying to get too much. Because now if he can play f5, I don't know. Let's just give an example. Maybe f5 here, and oh yikes! He's hitting the queen, discover attack, and all the Black pieces are really jamming in the center. But Fischer is too good. He's too good for that. So he plays bishop takes d4, pawn takes, and now just rook f6. And I think just really what a nice move. Such a straightforward attack. The idea by Fischer, I mean, he just wants to play e5. He wants to open this bishop up, and he wants to checkmate Black on h7. That's about it. If he plays e5 first, and maybe this is what Benko is counting on here, is he could play f5. And again, this discovered attack would seem to save Black from the worst of it. Now, Black is not going to have a great game, but maybe he's going to be okay. If takes, even still, rook takes here, and Black is got, due to the presence of the opposite colored bishops, He's neutralized White's attack. I think Black has a playable game here. Good chances of drawing. But, Fischer's too good. So he just plays rook f6, and all of a sudden, the f-pawn is stuck, and there's no way to defend his king and the pawn on h7. So he tries king g8. I think it was just totally over here. At 1 second, I looked at knight c4, trying to deflect the bishop. If takes, then taking on c3. But it just doesn't, and also trying to line up queen e5, for example. But why just plays it just plays e5 anyway, and the bishop gets opened, and there's no way to defend. So rook f6 was a killer move. After king g8, e5, no surprise there. And after h6, Fischer wasn't going to just mess it up, and maybe if he takes here, maybe Benko is still trying to just weasel in this f5 move and just, liquidate some pieces or whatever. But Fischer was he just played knight e2. And there's now, not even now, he's not even trying to break through with the rook. He's just trying to move this knight. And after the knight moves, that's going to be it. I mean, there's wherever the knight goes, say queen f5. And that's the idea. That's Fischer's idea. So really, what a cool game. And if bishop takes f6 here, I do believe queen takes h6 would be unstoppable mate on h7 as well. So that's the game. That was it. After knight e2, Benko resigned. And what a cool game. Just to go through it real briefly, Fischer just coming out with the Austrian attack against the Pirc defense, developing normally. Nothing weird in Fischer's opening play here. f5, trying to open it up, but something weird by Benko indeed. Capturing the pawn on f5, at least playing knight d4 I thought was better. But capturing the pawn opens up his kingside protection. Now indecisiveness is at a critical moment, playing king h8. I think f5 was pretty much the only way to continue. And after queen g4, Fischer, once he smells an attack, he's not going to let it slip, and just opening up some deadly threats. So really, really nice attacking game by Bobby Fischer. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.